I'm Miranda, 34, standing in my parents' doorway clutching a perfectly wrapped gift and homemade apple pie. The scent of roast turkey wafts through the air as Christmas carols play softly in the background. Despite years of family tension, I arrived with hope in my heart that this year might be different. I never imagined I'd end up back in my car, tears streaming down my face after my brother Travis smirked and asked why they'd waste a seat on me. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt excluded by family during what should be the happiest time of year. Growing up as the middle child between Travis, 37, and Lauren, 31, taught me early that family dynamics aren't always fair. From the moment Travis was born, he was the golden child in our parents' eyes. Richard and Susan Parker had a clear hierarchy of affection, with Travis at the top, Lauren as the adorable baby, and me somewhere in the invisible middle. My earliest memory of Travis's cruelty dates back to first grade. I had spent weeks working on an art project for the school fair. It was a detailed diorama of our neighborhood, complete with tiny houses and paper trees. The night before the fair, I found it destroyed, torn apart, and scattered across my bedroom floor. When my parents rushed in to see what had happened, Travis was already there, shaking his head sadly. Miranda got mad because her project wasn't good enough, he lied smoothly. I tried to help her fix it, but she pushed me away. Despite my tearful denials, my parents believed him. They always did. That night, I cried myself to sleep while my father helped Travis build his own project in the garage. The next day, Travis won first place with a project my father had mostly created, while I showed up empty-handed. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When I made honor roll in middle school, Travis told our parents I had cheated on tests. When I was invited to senior prom by the boy I'd liked for years, Travis casually mentioned to him that I had been talking about another boy. My date canceled 3 days before prom. College should have been my escape, but family holidays and summer breaks meant returning to the same toxic environment. During my sophomore year, I brought home Dean, my first serious boyfriend. Travis spent the entire weekend telling embarrassing stories about me, most of which were exaggerated or entirely fabricated. Dean broke up with me a week later. After graduation, I secured a position at a prestigious architectural firm in the city. At family gatherings, whenever I tried to share my accomplishments, Travis would interrupt with his own news or change the subject entirely. If I designed a new office building, Travis had just closed a bigger real estate deal. If I received a promotion, Travis had just acquired a new investment property. My relationship with my cousin Alicia added another layer of pain to family dynamics. We had once been close, almost like sisters, until Grandmother Rose passed away 5 years ago. Grandmother had always promised me her antique silver locket, a family heirloom passed down through generations. She had told me stories about it throughout my childhood, explaining how it had traveled from Ireland with our ancestors during the potato famine. The day after Grandmother's funeral, I went to her bedroom to collect the locket, only to discover it missing. Later that day, I spotted it around Alicia's neck. When I confronted her, she claimed Grandmother had given it to her privately. Despite knowing this was a lie, my family sided with Alicia. My mother suggested I was confused by grief, while my father told me not to make a scene at such a difficult time. Every family gathering since then, Alicia has worn that locket, a constant reminder of what was stolen from me and how little my family valued the truth when it came from my lips. Last year had been particularly difficult. I received a significant promotion at work, becoming the youngest senior architect in my firm's history. I purchased a beautiful apartment in the city with a view of the park. I was featured in an architectural magazine for my innovative sustainable design concepts. Yet at Thanksgiving dinner, my family spent the entire meal discussing Travis's new vacation home and Lauren's wedding plans. My promotion was mentioned only in passing, with my mother quickly changing the subject to ask Travis about his golf game. After that Thanksgiving, I started seeing Dr. Marshall, a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Our sessions helped me recognize the patterns of manipulation and emotional abuse I had normalized. Dr. Marshall suggested I set boundaries, perhaps even taking a break from family gatherings until I felt stronger. But they're still my family, I had insisted. If I could just make them see me, really see me, maybe things could change. Dr. Marshall's expression had been sympathetic but doubtful. Sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into, she said gently. Still, I decided to try one more time with Christmas. I spent weeks preparing the perfect gifts. For my mother, a handcrafted scarf in her favorite shade of blue. For my father, a first edition of his favorite mystery novel. For Lauren, a custom photo album of her wedding preparations. And for Travis, something special, something that had taken careful planning. Under the elegant wrapping paper was a bound collection of evidence I had gathered over years. Emails he had sent undermining me to family members. Screenshots of messages where he admitted to lying about me. A recording from last Christmas where he mockingly described how easy it was to turn our parents against me. And finally, a note explaining that this would be my last attempt to show them who he really was. I had debated for weeks whether to bring this gift. Dr. Marshall had warned me that confrontations rarely change deeply entrenched family dynamics. But some part of me needed to try, to make one final stand before potentially walking away forever. So on Christmas morning, I packed my car with carefully wrapped presents, a homemade apple pie using Grandmother Rose's recipe, and hoped that perhaps this year would be different. I drove to my parents' suburban home with butterflies in my stomach, rehearsing what I would say if Travis started his usual tactics. What I never prepared for was being told I wasn't even worthy of a seat at the table. I arrived at my parents' colonial home at exactly 3 p.m., the designated time for Christmas dinner. The house looked like something from a holiday magazine cover, with twinkling white lights outlining the roof and windows, a wreath adorned with red berries on the front door, and 2 perfectly symmetrical Christmas trees flanking the entrance. Before ringing the doorbell, I took a moment to check my appearance in my car mirror. I had spent extra time getting ready, wearing a forest green dress that complemented my auburn hair, which I had styled in loose waves. My makeup was subtle but polished. I looked good, confident, professional. The version of myself I wanted my family to finally see and respect. The door swung open to reveal my mother, elegant as always in a red cashmere sweater and pearl earrings. "Miranda," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're right on time." The observation seemed more accusation than compliment. I stepped inside, arms laden with gifts and my pie. My mother accepted the dessert with a cursory "thank you" before disappearing into the kitchen without offering to help with the presents or take my coat. In the living room, a very different scene was unfolding. My father was enthusiastically embracing Lauren and her husband Patrick, laughing at something Patrick had said. "That's my son-in-law," he exclaimed, clapping Patrick on the back. Across the room, Travis was holding court with our aunts and uncles, gesturing animatedly as they listened with rapt attention. His wife Rachel stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, diamond bracelet catching the light from the chandelier. "Miranda's here," my mother announced flatly as she returned from the kitchen. A few heads turned my way, offering perfunctory smiles and distracted waves before returning to their conversations. Only Lauren broke away to give me a brief hug. "Nice dress," she said, before lowering her voice. "Just so you know, Mom's been stressed about dinner all day, so maybe don't bring up work stuff? Last time you talked about your promotion, she had a migraine for 2 days." Before I could respond, Alicia entered the room with her new boyfriend. "Everyone, this is Justin," she announced. The family swarmed around them, asking questions and offering drinks. Around Alicia's neck, catching the light from the Christmas tree, hung Grandmother Rose's silver locket. I placed my gifts under the tree and moved toward a group of relatives, attempting to join their conversation about recent travel. My Aunt Barbara was describing her cruise to Alaska when I approached. "It sounds amazing," I said during a pause. "I've been researching sustainable tourism options for my next vacation." My aunt glanced at me, nodded vaguely, then turned slightly to exclude me from the circle. Anyway, as I was saying about the glaciers. This pattern repeated throughout the pre-dinner mingling. Conversations stopped when I approached. Family members excused themselves to refresh their drinks. Questions about my life were superficial and brief, immediately redirected to more interesting topics. When it was time for family photos, my mother organized everyone in front of the fireplace. Travis and Rachel in the center, she directed. Lauren and Patrick on the left. Alicia and Justin on the right. She positioned aunts, uncles, and cousins around them, then stepped back to assess the arrangement. "Mom," I said quietly, "where should I stand?" She blinked, as if just remembering I was there. "Oh, Miranda. Could you actually take the photo? You're so good with that sort of thing." I swallowed the lump in my throat and took the camera, capturing multiple shots of my smiling family while I remained invisible behind the lens. Later, as I helped arrange appetizers on the dining room sideboard, Travis approached. He looked me up and down with that familiar smirk. "Green is certainly a bold choice for your complexion," he said, just loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear. "But I guess architecture firms don't exactly prioritize fashion sense, do they?" I forced a smile. "How's the real estate market, Travis?" "I heard interest rates have made things challenging." His eyes narrowed slightly. "For amateurs, maybe. My portfolio's never been stronger." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Speaking of strong, how's your therapy going? Mom mentioned you've been getting help for your issues." Heat rushed to my face. My therapy sessions were private. I had only told my mother in confidence, during a rare moment when she had seemed genuinely concerned about me. "I'm doing very well, thank you," I replied stiffly, arranging stuffed mushrooms on a platter with more force than necessary. Travis chuckled, satisfied at having provoked a reaction. "Good to hear. We're all very concerned about your stability." He patted my shoulder condescendingly before rejoining his wife. Across the room, I spotted Alicia touching the locket as she laughed at something Justin said. Our eyes met briefly, and I thought I detected a flicker of guilt before she deliberately turned away. As the afternoon wore on, I began noticing something odd about the dining room setup. My mother was a stickler for tradition, always using her best china, crystal glasses, and silver place settings for holiday meals. The table was already set beautifully with the Christmas china, matching napkins folded into perfect swans, and name cards at each place. I casually walked around the table, counting places and looking for my name. 10 settings, 10 chairs, 12 people, including me. My name card was nowhere to be found. "Mom," I asked, finding her in the kitchen basting the turkey. "I don't see my place card at the table." She kept her eyes on the oven. "Don't worry about that now, Miranda. Why don't you make yourself useful and refill the ice bucket?" An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as I did as she asked. When I returned with the ice, I overheard my mother whispering to my aunt in the hallway. "I don't know why she's making such a fuss," my mother was saying. "It's not like she ever enjoys these gatherings anyway. Always sitting there with that look on her face." "But Susan," my aunt replied, "surely there's room to squeeze in one more chair?" My mother sighed dramatically. "Richard's back has been bothering him. He needs space at the table. And Travis specifically asked that we keep things intimate this year. You know how he feels about Miranda's attitude." They fell silent as they noticed me standing there, ice bucket in hand. My aunt at least had the grace to look embarrassed, while my mother simply took the ice and walked away. I retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Staring at my reflection, I wondered how I could have been so naive. I had come hoping for acceptance, for a place in my family, when they had already decided I didn't deserve one. Literally. Taking a deep breath, I splashed cold water on my face and reapplied my lipstick. I had two choices: leave now and preserve what little dignity I had left, or stay and see this through to whatever humiliating conclusion awaited me. I thought about Travis's gift, sitting innocently under the tree. I thought about years of exclusion and gaslighting. I thought about Dr. Marshall's words about chosen family. Then I straightened my shoulders, unlocked the bathroom door, and headed back to the living room. I would see this through. One way or another, this Christmas would be different. "Dinner is served." My mother's voice rang out from the dining room at precisely 5 p.m. Family members began migrating toward the delicious aromas, drinks in hand, conversations continuing without pause. The dining room was a vision of holiday perfection. The mahogany table gleamed under the soft light of the chandelier, which had been adorned with sprigs of holly. A red and green runner stretched down the center, decorated with pine cones, cinnamon sticks, and miniature gold ornaments. Tall red candles in silver holders provided a warm, flickering glow that reflected off the crystal glasses at each place setting. The Christmas china, which my mother only used once a year, featured hand-painted holly borders around cream-colored plates. Each napkin was folded into the shape of a Christmas tree, with small silver star napkin rings at the top. Place cards written in my mother's elegant calligraphy marked each person's assigned seat. The centerpiece was a lush arrangement of red roses, white lilies, and pine branches, professionally designed and delivered that morning, according to my aunt's earlier comments. Everything was meticulously arranged, each detail considered and perfect. Everyone began finding their seats, exclaiming over the beauty of the table. My father took his place at the head, with my mother at the foot. Travis and Rachel were seated at my father's right hand, the position of honor. Lauren and Patrick sat at my mother's right. Alicia and Justin were placed across from Travis and Rachel, while my aunt and uncle completed the arrangement. I stood awkwardly at the threshold of the dining room, waiting for someone to notice the obvious problem. No one did. Or rather, no one chose to acknowledge it. Finally, as everyone settled into their chairs, my Aunt Barbara glanced up at me still standing in the doorway. A look of discomfort crossed her face before she quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in straightening her napkin. "Mom," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm despite the hammering of my heart. "Where should I sit?" A hush fell over the table. My mother paused in the act of serving the mashed potatoes, her expression momentarily frozen before shifting into a practiced smile. "Oh, Miranda," she said lightly, as if addressing a minor inconvenience rather than a profound exclusion. "The table's quite full with everyone here. I thought you could eat in the car. It's just for today." The words hung in the air like ice crystals, sharp and cold. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Around the table, gazes dropped to plates. Wine glasses suddenly became fascinating objects of study. Then Travis, emboldened by the silence, looked directly at me with that familiar smirk of superiority. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes gleaming with malice. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, looking around at each face, searching for anyone, who would speak up for me. My father stared intently at his plate, methodically cutting a piece of turkey, without looking up. Lauren bit her lip, her eyes darting between me and Travis, but she remained silent. Rachel, Travis's wife, had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she placed her hand over his on the table in a gesture of solidarity. Alicia touched grandmother's locket at her throat, then quickly dropped her hand when she noticed me watching. Justin, clearly confused by the tension, looked to Alicia for explanation, but she simply shook her head slightly. My aunt and uncle exchanged glances, but said nothing. My mother continued serving food as if nothing unusual had happened, as if suggesting her daughter eat Christmas dinner alone in a cold car was perfectly normal. I looked around the table once more, taking in every detail. Everyone had a place. Everyone except me. Even Alicia, who had stolen something precious from me and never faced consequences, sat comfortably among family, accepted and included. My face burned with humiliation. My stomach felt hollow. I could feel tears threatening, but I refused to give Travis the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I took a slow, deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. For years, I had sought approval from these people. I had made excuses for their behavior, blamed myself for not being lovable enough, tried harder and harder to earn a place in their hearts. And here was the literal manifestation of my position in the family all along. There was no room for me at their table. There never had been. I glanced toward the Christmas tree in the living room, where my carefully wrapped packages sat. Among them was Travis's gift, the one I had debated for weeks about giving. The one that contained evidence of years of manipulation and cruelty. In that moment, standing excluded in the doorway of my childhood home while my family prepared to enjoy Christmas dinner without me, something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or an oversight. This was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less than, as unwanted, as the family member they tolerated rather than loved. And for the first time, I didn't feel the crushing weight of rejection. Instead, I felt something else entirely: clarity. I remembered placing Travis's gift at a spot before dinner, slipping the small envelope under his plate while helping set the table. No one had noticed. No one ever noticed what I did, unless it was to criticize. I looked back at the table, at my brother's smug expression, at my mother's deliberate avoidance, at my father's cowardice, at Alicia, wearing my grandmother's locket, at the empty space where I should have been sitting, and I made a decision that would change everything. Standing in that doorway, excluded from my own family Christmas dinner, I felt a strange calm descend over me. It was as if I was watching the scene from outside my body, seeing with perfect clarity what had been true all along. This wasn't new behavior. This was simply the most honest version of what had been happening my entire life. Memories flashed through my mind in rapid succession. Age 7. Waiting alone after ballet practice because my parents forgot to pick me up, too busy attending Travis's baseball game. Age 12. Eating lunch alone in the school bathroom after Travis told everyone I had lice. Age 16. Not being allowed to go to homecoming because Travis said he'd seen me smoking behind the gym, a complete fabrication. My college graduation, where my parents left early because Travis claimed to have food poisoning. Job promotions met with indifference. Holidays where my gifts were opened last and with minimal enthusiasm. The pattern was undeniable. I had spent decades making excuses for their behavior, telling myself that if I just achieved more, spoke more eloquently, dressed more appropriately, somehow I would finally earn their love and respect. But standing there, watching them begin to eat as if my exclusion was the most natural thing in the world, I finally understood. Nothing I could ever do would be enough. Because the problem had never been me. A curious warmth spread through my chest, replacing the cold ache of rejection. It wasn't happiness, exactly. It was something more powerful. Liberation. The freedom that comes with finally acknowledging a painful truth instead of running from it. Dr. Marshall's words from our last session echoed in my mind. Miranda, you keep trying to win a game that's rigged against you. The only winning move might be not to play. Under Travis's plate sat the envelope I had carefully placed there earlier. Inside was evidence I had collected over years of his manipulation. Screenshots of text messages where he bragged to friends about turning our parents against me. Emails he had sent to family members planting seeds of doubt about my character and stability. A recording from last Thanksgiving where he admitted to deliberately sabotaging my relationships. A copy of Grandmother Rose's will specifically leaving her locket to me, which the family had never seen because Travis had intercepted it. I had gathered these pieces meticulously, initially planning to confront the entire family, to force them to see the truth about their golden boy. I had imagined tears, apologies, a dramatic reconciliation. The fantasy of finally being embraced as an equal member of the family. But now, looking at them all comfortable in their exclusion of me, I realized that fantasy had always been just that. Even with irrefutable evidence, they would find a way to excuse Travis, to blame me, to maintain the family mythology they had invested in for decades. I considered my options. I could create a scene, dumping the evidence on the table and demanding acknowledgement. I could break down in tears, appealing to whatever shreds of empathy they might possess. I could grab Travis's plate and throw it against the wall, decades of repressed anger finally finding release. But each of those scenarios gave them power over me. Each made me the unstable one, the problem to be managed. Each would reinforce the narrative Travis had so carefully constructed. Or I could choose a different path. I could recognize that I deserved better than fighting for scraps of affection from people who had demonstrated, time and again, that they were incapable of giving it freely. I could acknowledge that family isn't just about blood relations, but about mutual respect and care. I could choose myself. In that moment, I made my decision. I would not beg for a seat at a table where I wasn't wanted. I would not expose Travis's manipulations to people who had actively participated in my exclusion. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I would leave them with something that would speak louder than any emotional outburst. I would leave them with the truth and the knowledge that I was done playing by their rules. The family continued eating, conversation gradually resuming as they collectively decided to ignore the uncomfortable scene. Travis was telling some story about a difficult client, gesturing with his fork, reveling in being the center of attention as always. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, no longer waiting in the doorway, but entering the room with purpose. My movement caught their attention, conversations faltering as all eyes turned toward me. I walked directly to the Christmas tree and picked up my gift for Travis. The room was utterly silent now, everyone watching with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. With measured steps, I approached the table, the wrapped package in my hands. I stood directly behind Travis's chair, feeling a strange sense of power as he had to twist awkwardly to look up at me. For once, I was the one looking down at him. The dining room fell silent as I stood behind Travis, gift in hand. My heart pounded, but my voice remained steady when I finally spoke. "Travis," I said, my tone calm and clear. "I brought something special for you this Christmas." His expression shifted from annoyance to wariness. He knew me well enough to sense something had changed, that this wasn't the same Miranda who typically absorbed his cruelty with quiet hurt. "Can it wait until after dinner?" My mother interjected, her voice strained. "We've just started eating." "No," I replied simply. "It can't." I placed the elegantly wrapped box beside Travis's plate. The paper was silver with subtle snowflakes, tied with a blue ribbon that matched his eyes. Eyes that now regarded me with suspicion. "What is this?" he asked, not touching the package. "Open it," I suggested. "Or don't. But either way, check under your plate." Travis's face paled slightly. His hand moved instinctively to the edge of his plate, but he hesitated. "What are you talking about?" my father demanded, finally finding his voice. "Miranda, you're disrupting dinner." "I'm disrupting dinner?" I repeated, a small laugh escaping me. "Not the fact that you've all decided I should eat in my car? Not Travis suggesting you'd be wasting a seat on me?" Uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. Lauren looked down at her lap. Alicia fidgeted with her napkin. "You're being dramatic," Travis said, attempting to regain control. "It's just seating arrangements. Not everything is about you." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not about me. It's about you, Travis. It always has been." I gestured toward his plate. "Go ahead. Look underneath." Something in my tone must have unsettled him, because Travis actually pushed back his chair slightly. With obvious reluctance, he lifted his plate, revealing the cream-colored envelope beneath. The table watched in tense silence as he opened it and removed the contents. His face, always so controlled, so practiced at projecting confidence, visibly shifted as he scanned the first page. Color drained from his cheeks, then rushed back as anger replaced shock. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice tight. "The truth," I replied simply. "Something this family isn't particularly familiar with." His eyes darted back to the papers, then up to me, then around the table. For perhaps the first time in his life, Travis Parker was speechless. "What is it?" my mother asked, stretching to see across the table. "Nothing," Travis said quickly, attempting to stuff the papers back into the envelope. "It's evidence," I said calmly. "Screenshots of texts where Travis brags about turning you against me. Emails where he undermines me to family members. A recording from last Thanksgiving where he admits to lying about me for years." Rachel, Travis's wife, frowned and reached for the envelope. "Let me see that." Travis pulled it away from her. "It's nothing." "Miranda's making things up, as usual." "Am I?" I asked. "Then why are you hiding it? If I'm lying, show everyone." Travis's jaw clenched. He knew he was caught. "There's also a copy of Grandmother Rose's will," I continued, looking directly at Alicia. the one specifically leaving her locket to me. Alicia's hand flew to the locket around her neck. "I didn't, she gave it to me," she stammered. "No, she didn't," I said firmly. "Travis told you I didn't want it. He intercepted the will and convinced you that grandmother had changed her mind." Alicia turned to Travis, confusion and betrayal dawning on her face. "Is that true?" Travis stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and listen to these accusations." "Then don't," I replied. "But everyone should know that I've made copies of everything in that envelope. I'm done protecting this family's illusions about their golden boy." My father finally found his voice. "Miranda, that's enough. This is Christmas dinner, for God's sake." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "A dinner I wasn't welcome at. A family I've never truly been welcome in." I turned my attention back to Travis, who was now gripping the envelope so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "Check under your plate again," I instructed. With visible reluctance, he lifted his plate once more to reveal a small, handwritten note I had placed beneath the envelope. "Read it," I said. Travis's eyes scanned the note, his expression hardening. When he didn't speak, I recited the words I had written hours earlier. "This is the last time I will try to make you see me. The last time I will fight for a place in this family. I release you from the burden of pretending to care about me, and I release myself from the burden of seeking your approval." The silence that followed was profound. Around the table, expressions ranged from shock to discomfort to the beginning glimmers of understanding. I took a step back, surveying the scene one last time. The perfect table setting. The family gathered without me. The physical manifestation of what had always been emotionally true. "Merry Christmas," I said quietly. "Enjoy your dinner." With that, I turned and walked steadily through the living room, retrieving my coat and purse. No one followed me. No one called my name. As I opened the front door, I heard raised voices from the dining room, the beginning of what would undoubtedly be a complicated conversation. But it wouldn't be my conversation. Not anymore. The winter air was crisp against my face as I walked to my car. Snow had begun to fall while I was inside, dusting the world with a clean, white blanket. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, watching the snowflakes swirl in the glow of the porch light. Then I started the engine, closed the car door behind me, and drove away from the house I had grown up in, feeling lighter than I had in years. I checked into the Parkview Hotel 20 minutes after leaving my parents' house. It was one of the few places open on Christmas, catering to travelers and, apparently, family outcasts like myself. The lobby was decorated with tasteful holiday decor, a large tree twinkling in the corner and soft carols playing through hidden speakers. "Just you tonight?" asked the receptionist, a woman about my age with a kind smile and a name tag reading Bethany. "Yes," I replied, suddenly aware of how this looked. Checking into a hotel alone on Christmas evening, still wearing a party dress, no luggage except my purse. I had a change of plans. Bethany's expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes held understanding. "I've put you in a room with a view of the park. The restaurant is serving a special Christmas dinner until 9 if you're interested." I thanked her and took the key card, grateful for her discretion. In my room, I kicked off my heels and sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the evening replaying in my mind. The hurt was still there, a dull ache behind my ribs, but it was accompanied by something unexpected: relief. My phone began buzzing almost immediately. The first text was from Lauren. What was in that envelope? "Travis is freaking out. Are you okay?" I didn't respond. My mother called next. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail. "Miranda, this behavior is completely unacceptable. You've ruined Christmas dinner and upset everyone. Call me back immediately so we can discuss how you're going to apologize to Travis." I deleted the message. My father texted, "Your mother is very upset. Please call." I turned my phone off. After a shower, I changed into the hotel bathrobe and ordered room service. The Christmas dinner special arrived on a covered tray: turkey with cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a slice of pumpkin pie. I ate by the window, watching snow fall on the park below, Christmas lights reflecting off the white ground in bursts of color. It wasn't how I had imagined spending Christmas evening, but there was a strange peace in the solitude. No walking on eggshells. No bracing for Travis's next barb. No pretending that everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. I turned my phone back on around 9 o'clock, bracing myself for more messages. There were several missed calls from my parents and a dozen texts from various family members, but one message caught my eye. It was from Alicia. "Can we talk?" Not about the locket. About Travis. I hesitated, then replied. "Tomorrow. Coffee at Marcus Cafe, 10 a.m. The next morning, I woke early, ordered breakfast to my room, and spent time journaling about the previous day, a practice Dr. Marshall had encouraged. Writing down the exclusion, Travis's cruelty, and my decision to walk away helped solidify my resolve. This wasn't a momentary emotional reaction. It was a necessary step toward healing. Alicia was already at Marcus Cafe when I arrived, fidgeting with a napkin, grandmother's locket conspicuously absent from her neck. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mixture of guilt and nervousness. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Why did you want to see me?" I asked, not unkindly, but not offering any easy absolution either. Alicia took a deep breath. "After you left, everything fell apart. Travis tried to destroy the papers, but Rachel grabbed them first. She read some of it out loud." Alicia's eyes met mine. "Is it true that he told you I was making fun of your dress at Cousin Beth's wedding?" I nodded. "And that you said my career was just a hobby until I found a husband?" "I never said that," Alicia whispered. "I've always admired your work. I tell people my cousin is this amazing architect who designs sustainable buildings." "And I never said you were too unstable to handle grandmother's locket," I replied. "That was Travis too." Tears filled Alicia's eyes. "He played us against each other. All these years." We talked for 2 hours, unraveling years of misunderstandings and manufactured conflicts. Alicia revealed that after I left, Rachel had confronted Travis about other messages in the envelope, including texts to a woman who wasn't her. The Christmas dinner had devolved into multiple arguments, with Travis eventually storming out, Rachel following in a separate car. "Your mom kept saying you were exaggerating, but your dad actually stood up to her," Alicia said, sounding as surprised as I felt. "He said they'd been enabling Travis for too long. I've never seen him like that." When our meeting ended, Alicia handed me a small gift box. Inside was Grandmother Rose's locket. "It was always meant for you," she said simply. "I'm sorry it took me so long to return it." Over the following week, my phone continued to light up with messages. My mother's moved from demanding apologies to increasingly desperate attempts to maintain the status quo. "We can put this all behind us if you'll just talk to Travis. Families have disagreements, but we need to stick together. You're overreacting to a simple misunderstanding about seating." My father, surprisingly, took a different approach. His initial messages asked me to call my mother, but gradually shifted. "I've been thinking about what happened," he wrote 3 days after Christmas. "I didn't handle things well. I should have spoken up." Lauren called me on New Year's Eve. "Travis and Rachel are getting divorced," she said without preamble. She found more messages on his phone. "It's a whole thing." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Rachel had never been unkind to me, just distant. "Are you?" Lauren sounded surprised. "After everything he did?" "His marriage failing doesn't fix anything," I replied. "It's just more pain." Lauren was quiet for a moment. "I should have said something at dinner. When Mom told you to eat in the car, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't speak up." "No, you didn't." I agreed, not offering easy forgiveness. "Can we have lunch sometime?" she asked hesitantly. "I'd like to try to be a better sister." I agreed to think about it. The most surprising communication came from my Aunt Barbara, who had always been firmly in my mother's camp. She sent a handwritten card that arrived a week after New Year's. "What happened at Christmas dinner made me reflect on how we've all treated you over the years," she wrote. "I've been complicit in allowing Travis to control the family narrative. I want to apologize and hope that someday you might give me a chance to know the niece I've never properly appreciated. Not everyone reached out. My mother's messages grew less frequent, then stopped entirely when I didn't respond. Several aunts and uncles maintained radio silence, presumably picking sides with my mother or simply avoiding the drama. Travis never contacted me directly, but I heard through Lauren that he was attempting damage control, alternating between painting me as mentally unstable and admitting to some exaggerations, while minimizing their impact. 2 weeks after Christmas, I had my regular session with Dr. Marshall. I told her everything, from the dinner exclusion to the envelope to the aftermath. "How do you feel about your decision now?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "Sad," I admitted, "but not regretful. It feels like mourning something that never really existed in the first place." "And what about moving forward? Have you thought about what kind of relationship, if any, you want with your family?" I think I need time," I said slowly. "With some of them, like Lauren and my dad, maybe there's a path forward with better boundaries. With others, like my mother and Travis, I don't know if there's anything healthy possible there." Dr. Marshall nodded. "That's a very insightful perspective. Healing family relationships doesn't always mean returning to the same dynamics. Sometimes it means creating entirely new ones, with clear boundaries and expectations. And sometimes it means recognizing that certain relationships may never be healthy for you." As January turned to February, I began establishing those new boundaries. I agreed to occasional lunches with Lauren, with the understanding that she wouldn't relay information back to our mother or Travis. I had one careful phone call with my father, who apologized again and asked if we could meet in person soon. I told him I wasn't ready yet. Alicia and I began rebuilding our relationship, discovering that without Travis's interference, we actually had much in common. She invited me to her apartment for dinner, where she displayed grandmother's photo in a prominent place. "I want to remember who she really was," Alicia explained, "not the version of her that Travis created to divide us." I maintained my distance from my mother and Travis. It wasn't easy. There were days when I doubted myself, when old patterns of thinking suggested that I was being too harsh, that family should forgive anything. On those days, I reread my journal entry from Christmas night, reminding myself of exactly what had happened and how it had made me feel. By the time spring arrived, bringing cherry blossoms to the park outside my apartment window, I had created a new kind of family structure. One built on mutual respect rather than obligation. One where my voice mattered. One where a seat at the table wasn't conditional on accepting mistreatment. It wasn't perfect. There were still difficult conversations, still moments of grief for what might have been. But for the first time in my life, I was relating to my family as an adult with boundaries, not a child desperately seeking approval. And that made all the difference. 6 months after that fateful Christmas dinner, I stood in my newly redecorated apartment, surveying the changes with satisfaction. Gone were the muted, safe colors I had chosen to avoid criticism during family visits. Now the walls were painted a bold teal, artwork I loved hung in carefully selected spots, and plants thrived on every surface. This space finally reflected who I was, not who I thought my family wanted me to be. My phone chimed with a text from Kimberly, a colleague who had become a close friend after learning about my family situation. "Still on for dinner night? Marcus is making his famous lasagna." I smiled and confirmed. Thursday night dinners with Kimberly and her husband had become a cherished ritual, part of the chosen family I had built in the months since Christmas. The transformation in my life extended far beyond home decor. At work, I had taken on a leadership role in a major sustainable housing project, voicing my ideas confidently in meetings rather than holding back for fear of sounding too proud, as my mother might say. My boss had commented on the change, noting that my quiet brilliance was finally getting the recognition it deserved. In my personal life, I had started dating again, this time with a clearer understanding of healthy relationship dynamics. Michael, an environmental engineer I had met through work, appreciated my directness and respected my boundaries. Our relationship was still new, but built on a foundation of mutual respect I had never experienced before. My weekly sessions with Dr. Marshall continued, though we had recently discussed transitioning to bi-weekly appointments as I developed stronger internal resources. Through therapy, I had learned to recognize and counter the critical inner voice that sounded suspiciously like Travis, to set and maintain boundaries without guilt, and to value myself even when others didn't. "You've done remarkable work," Dr. Marshall had told me during our last session, particularly in distinguishing between forgiveness and reconciliation. That distinction had been crucial to my healing process. I had come to understand that forgiving my family, in the sense of releasing my anger and resentment for my own well-being, didn't necessarily mean returning to the same toxic patterns. I could wish them well without subjecting myself to further harm. The family landscape had shifted dramatically in those 6 months. Travis and Rachel's divorce had been finalized, and he had moved to Boston for a fresh start, according to Lauren. Without his constant manipulation, other family relationships had space to evolve. My father and I now met for lunch every other week. Our early conversations had been awkward, laden with unspoken history, but gradually we established a new, more honest connection. During our third lunch, he had finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I failed you as a father," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I let Travis dictate how he treated you because it was easier than standing up to him or your mother. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really I was just being a coward." I had reached across the table and squeezed his hand, my own eyes damp. "Thank you for saying that." We weren't completely healed, perhaps never would be, but we were building something new on a foundation of truth rather than pretense. Lauren and I had also grown closer, our relationship evolving into something more sisterly than it had ever been during our childhood. She had recently confided that she was in therapy herself, working through her role as the family baby and the ways she had been simultaneously privileged and infantilized. "I never realized how much the family dynamics affected me until everything blew up at Christmas," she admitted during a weekend hike. "I always thought I had it good, being the baby, but now I see how it limited me too." Alicia had become an unexpected ally. After returning grandmother's locket, she had made consistent efforts to rebuild our trust, never pushing but always showing up. We had discovered a shared interest in genealogy and were working together to document our grandmother's stories before they were lost to time. My mother remained the most difficult relationship. After weeks of silence following Christmas, she had eventually reached out with a carefully worded non-apology. "I'm sorry if you felt hurt by the seating arrangements." When I didn't immediately accept this olive branch, she had cycled through guilt trips, anger, and finally a grudging acknowledgement that perhaps she had been a bit insensitive. We had spoken twice on the phone since then, brief, surface-level conversations that avoided any meaningful topics. I had declined 3 invitations to family gatherings, not yet ready to test those waters. My mother interpreted this as punishment rather than self-protection, but I was learning to let her misinterpretations be her problem, not mine. The approaching holiday season brought new considerations. 4th of July, Thanksgiving, and eventually Christmas would all require decisions about family involvement. But unlike the previous year, I now approached these decisions from a position of choice rather than obligation. For the first time, I was planning a 4th of July gathering at my apartment, inviting friends and selected family members who had demonstrated respect for my boundaries. My father would be there, as would Lauren and Alicia. My mother had not been invited, a decision that prompted another round of texts about family loyalty, but I held firm. Perhaps the most profound change was internal. The constant anxiety, the need to prepare defenses for family encounters, the anticipatory dread before any interaction with Travis, all had diminished significantly. In their place was a quiet confidence, a knowledge that I could trust myself to maintain appropriate boundaries. I wore Grandmother Rose's locket now, not every day, but on occasions that felt significant. The silver oval contained a tiny photo of her in her youth, smiling with the same eyes I saw in the mirror. Sometimes I touched it and imagined her pride in seeing me finally stand up for myself. One evening in early summer, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, journal open on my lap. I had developed a habit of reflecting on my progress, noting moments of growth as well as challenges. That night, I wrote. I used to think family was something you were born into, a fixed constellation you had to navigate regardless of how it made you feel. Now I understand that family, real family, is built on actions, not blood. It's created through respect, kindness, and mutual support. Some of my blood relatives have earned a place in this new definition of family. Others have not. And that's okay. The most important lesson I've learned is that I don't need to set myself on fire to keep others warm. My worth isn't determined by my family's recognition. My place in the world isn't dependent on having a seat at their table. I can build my own table, surround it with people who truly see and value me, and that table will be far richer than any I was excluded from. I closed the journal, watching as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The woman who had stood in her parents' doorway last Christmas, desperately seeking approval, felt like a different person now. I had walked away from that table, but in doing so, I had found my way back to myself. And that was the most important seed of all. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your mental health? What boundaries have you created in your relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of personal growth, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose themselves sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the most important table is the one where you feel valued just as you are.